I'm Jeremy with Poindexter G, and today we're going to talk about firearms classifications. So what we're going to go over is the different classifications that firearms fall under in the United States. What I'm not going to do is go over all the laws for the different states because they vary quite a bit. You'll have to figure out your own individual state laws on your own. I'm also going to point out that I am not a lawyer and that if you're looking for legal advice about firearms, you need to find a lawyer to do that. And so we're going to start off with just your regular firearms. You can buy them, you can sell them. As far as person to person, you can sell them as long as it's to someone in the same state. As long as it's not someone that you know is legally restricted from being able to own a firearm, you can sell it to someone. You don't have to go through any type of registration for any of that. If you're going to buy a firearm through a dealer, then you'll have some forms you have to fill out and a check you'll have to go through. If you're going to sell to someone outside the state you live in, you'll have to transfer it to a dealer, and then that dealer can transfer it to them. Generally speaking, you can't have firearms mailed to you. You have to have them sent to a dealer, and then you can pick them up from there. There are some exceptions. You can mail a firearm to a manufacturer or a gunsmith who's going to be doing work on it there. You can mail to yourself at a different location that you're going to be at, but that tends to give you a lot of hassle from the shipping companies and really isn't something that's very easily done. And that's basically what you got going on for just regular firearms. Now we'll go ahead and get into the first list of ones that will be restricted, and these are going to be items that fall under the NFA or the National Firearms Act. Now, the NFA is actually part of the tax code under the IRS, so technically this is all a tax thing. But the things that fall under the NFA are short barrel rifles and shotguns, machine guns, which would basically be anything that's full auto, silencers or suppressors, destructive devices, and things that cause any other weapons. Now, with the exception of certain things classified as machine guns, you basically just have to pay a tax stamp on it. It'd be like $200 for a tax stamp, although it can be $5 for certain items. And then you have to go through a process of like filling out paperwork, going through a background check, sending like a photo and fingerprints off to the ATF where they go through everything. This is a big, long, drawn-out process, and it does not ever get done quickly. The dealer that's going to sell it to you has to just sit on it there for a long time, and then once the ATF finally gets around to doing all the stuff on it, you can have it given to you. Short barrel rifles would be anything 16 inches or less, or anything with an overall length of 26 inches, and that is generally with the, if it has a folding stock, the stock extended out all the way. Destructive devices are going to include, in addition to just things like grenades and certain explosives that aren't decorative like fireworks, but also anything with a bore larger than 50 caliber. Now, shotguns are excluded from this because shotguns apparently have a sporting use. The big one on here is machine guns. Now, initially it was just, if you wanted a machine gun, it was a $200 tax stamp. Now, in 1934, when this was implemented, that was a lot of money. As it went on, that kind of became less and less. Well, there was, and something in the Gun Owners Protection Act, sounds like a nice thing, but it had this ugly little thing in it, the Hughes Amendment. And the Hughes Amendment made it basically any machine gun manufactured after May 19, 1986 was no longer legal. It had to be registered and made before that date. So yeah, that makes all of the machine guns now that are legal are basically made before 1986. And really the only way that you could get anything made after 1986 is if you are a dealer or a manufacturer. You can have some as a sample to show that to a prospective buyer, maybe like a police department or something, that you could sell that to them. You've got to have the proper license for that to be able to sell that type of firearm. You also have to be able to show that you have a pretty good reason to have it. You can't just be like, yeah, this is a dealer sample that we just have because. It's got to have like an actual reason for you to have it around. So other things that will also fall under machine guns is going to be any open bolt firearm manufactured after 1982. They decided that those are just too easily converted into machine guns, so they're machine guns. Any part that is used to convert a semi-auto firearm to a full auto is considered a machine gun. This, at the moment, at the time of this video, includes bump stocks. Now, that's not written down in the law. That is just a decision made by ATF at request of the president. And there is some legal stuff going on there in the courts right now that may be getting that status shot down, but we'll have to see how that goes. And then any other weapon is kind of a catch-all for weird things, like if you put a foregrip on a pistol. Well, now it's made to be used with two hands and not one, so it's not a pistol anymore. It's something else, so it's in any other weapon. If you put a stock on a pistol, it's in any other weapon. And you get a lot of weird things that can happen there. This is where you get like the whole AR pistol thing, where it's like, well, it's registered as a pistol and not as a rifle. That means that we can put a short barrel on it, and we're putting a brace on it and not a full stock, because we can't put a stock, but we can put a brace, and it's not a short barrel rifle because of that. Now, if you put like an angled foregrip on the front of it, that's still okay. Vertical foregrip on an AR pistol is like a no-no. You can't do that. A lot of these things are just whatever the ATF kind of decides at the moment, and can even change from one time to another. So yeah, good luck keeping up with all that. So now that we've gone through all of that craziness there, let's go ahead and go on to some less restrictive things. The first one of those are going to be antique firearms. Now, according to the ATF, an antique firearm is anything made before 1899. Not made up to 1899, but made prior to 1899. Why this 1899 date? I don't know. So, anything that was made before that is an antique. Antiques are not considered firearms, and there is no federal restrictions on them. You can buy them from a dealer without any type of background check. You can buy them if you're restricted from owning firearms. You can mail them. Some of the carriers have restrictions on what they will allow you to ship. Now, an important thing to understand about this is that it is based off of the production date of that firearm. If you have a Krag Jorgensen, which was made before 1899, that's an antique, and it can be treated as an antique. If that Krag Jorgensen was made in 1899 instead of 1898, it's now a modern firearm and is put under the classification of all modern firearms. And so it's just based off of that production date. And if you can't tell for sure what the production date is, then legally speaking, you're supposed to assume that it was made after and it is treated like a firearm. Now, some other things that are going to fall into this antique category are going to be modern day reproductions of black powder firearms. That's going to be like muzzle loading, black powder rifles and pistols, your cap and ball revolvers, any of those type of things. As long as you have to put the powder and the ball in it separately, that's a black powder firearm and is not considered a firearm. It doesn't matter if it literally looks like an old Brown Bess or if it looks like a very modern firearm and has a modern optic on it. If it's a muzzle loader, it's still not a firearm. Now, the last thing that will fall under this are going to be Curios and Relics. Now, this is an interesting one in that you really only are able to take advantage of it if you get a 03 FFL license. And what it will allow you to do is to be able to receive CNR eligible firearms in the mail. Basically, you can have it shipped to you from another person with an 03 FFL or anyone else with any type of firearms license. There's a fee involved with it, and there's paperwork that you have to keep up with, but that's kind of all that's going on with that. So as far as what are CNR eligible firearms, that is going to be anything 50 years old or older. Now, one crazy little thing kind of related to CNR firearms that has managed to end up being a benefit to everyone is the classification of the broom handle Mauser and Lugers that have their original holster stocks. They basically were made with a holster that could be removed off of your belt, snapped onto the back of it, and used as a stock with the pistol. They decided that since these are Curios and Relics and are collectible firearms, and that this was original things that came with it, that they were not going to classify them as like in any other weapon or a short barrel rifle for having the stock attached to them. So basically, to run down on this again, your regular firearms, you can buy and sell them to people in your state. You have to go through a background check if you get it through a dealer. You also have to send it to a dealer if you want to send it to someone outside of state. Antique weapons, which is anything before 1899, do not have any type of restrictions on them. Curios and Relics can be shipped around to individuals as long as they have an 03 FFL license. And NFA items have to have a tax stamp and an extra vetting process to be able to purchase them, except for machine guns made after 1986, which are illegal and are no bueno. So maybe that makes a little bit of sense about what's going on with all the different firearms classifications. If you found this video useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and a like. You can also leave a comment on here saying anything that you thought about it or to ask any other questions. And you can also visit my channel and subscribe to it to make sure that you catch all the videos that I post and not miss anything. I'm Jeremy with Poindexter G, and we'll see you next time.